Hey, push students, it's Mr. Imatsu here, coming with you with Reconstruction Part 2, and this is the final activity for Period 5. We're done with it. Right on. So we got the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, often called the Reconstruction Amendment. So we'll review those real quickly, and then we'll also talk about the Compromise of 1877. So this document here is kind of cool because it has kind of information. Sorry about that. That goes a little bit further. So I just Googled it, and actually one of the first one that comes from the U.S. Senate. But the 13th Amendment is pretty simple and to the point. This is the one that ends slavery, and it does, right? Slavery is ended. Now, again, as you guys saw in the previous screencast, it can be argued that the Black Codes, also known as Jim Crow laws, I didn't talk about that, but the Black Codes or the Jim Crow laws that were throughout the South still created slavery at a economic level and definitely didn't give citizenship at a political level. So there's that. The 14th Amendment, really, this is the amendment that kind of currently and modernly it makes citizenship a birth issue, right? So if you're born here in the United States, you are immediately a citizen, which is very unique compared to other countries. So if you're born in naturalized, if you're born here, you become a citizen and you get the right to vote, right? And you get equal protection of the law. Again, with limited amounts there for individuals that would actually be treated differently under the law, especially obviously African Americans. So again, remember we talked about this in the previous screencast, but the 13th, 14th, and we'll get into the 15th in a second, but these amendments are passed. They're kind of passed at different times. So here's 1868, 1860. This one was actually passed in 1862, I think, or something like that, or 1865. It was actually done during the war by the Republican North. And remember, that is true as well. Remember that the Senate at this time is basically the Republican North. A lot of the Democrats aren't allowed to come back into the Senate because they have basically committed treason and went against the country. So the 14th Amendment, again, going back into it in 1868. And this one's much later. No, this is all the way to 1870. Okay, so we're going about, a good 5 years now after the end of the war, of the Civil War, and we're still issuing these Reconstruction amendments. But this one really focuses on voting rights, right? So you can't disenfranchise. That's a kind of a word that you guys want to know. So to enfranchise is to give somebody the vote. Disenfranchise is to take away the vote on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Remember that a lot of these amendments are going to get passed, but what's going to be very interesting, and it says it right here, the Supreme Court that is very, very, I'm going to say this word, democratic, let's say pro-slavery, remember they're there for life. And the Democratic Republicans prior to Abraham Lincoln and the Democrats had a strong control of the United States presidency for a long time, and the Congress. Therefore, a lot of Democrats judges were appointed to the Supreme Court. So Marshall is gone, and we got Taney that was there earlier for the Dred Scott decision, and we have multiple other individuals that are still kind of Democrat supportive, and they're going to look at these 13th, 14th, 15th amendments and say, that's true for a federal level. It's the federal office or it's a federal building or federal whatever, that's fine. But individual states still can kind of pick this apart. They're going to kind of open the door to allow the states basically to kind of pick apart the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment and kind of get it out at certain levels and what they were kind of, I think, meant to do. What's interesting is we had, just going back to the U.S. president, some of you guys were probably like, okay, yeah, I remember Washington, Adams, and Jefferson, and Madison, and Monroe, and a little bit of Adams because of the corrupt bargain, and Jackson, and then we just skipped all these guys. What happened? Your key concept really doesn't have a focus on those. The next person that really knows Abraham Lincoln. They haven't even focused on Buchanan. A lot of Congress is happening at this time. It's kind of focused on domestic policies. And so this guy, Andrew Johnson, who comes after Lincoln, he is going to be the one that kind of vetoes this thing called the Civil Rights Act. And it's, again, an appeal to kind of get Southern support at this time. The election of 1876 is a very contested one. This comes from Wikipedia, and this kind of shows you they had 185, so this guy won theoretically by only one electoral vote. But if you look at the popular vote, which never changed, the electoral vote did, and we'll talk about that in a second. There was over 200,000 more people that voted. right? This guy got 47% of the vote, where Hayes did, and the Democrat got 50% of the vote. No, you can notice that he comes from New York, right? So remember, there are some Northern Democrats that were out there, that came around. But anyways, going back, Rutherford B. Hayes is actually going to be the president, despite only getting 47% of the vote. And prior to the end of the election, actually, he only has about 165 electoral college votes. So I highlighted this paragraph in here because it's really kind of cues into this kind of problem here. And then we saw this with John Quincy Adams and the corrupt bargain as well. But in this case, what happened was Tilden, who is this guy, oopsies, sorry about that. Tilden, who is the Democrat, he had 184 electoral votes. Hayes only had 165, but there were 20 electoral votes that were just undecided. And basically, they get together and they make a deal saying this: all right, we'll let the Republicans have it, but Republicans, you have to move now all the federal troops out of the South. And that's what we call the Compromise of 1877. So because the Republicans get the presidency, now the Democrats at the states get the Union troops out. And what's going to happen? This is now going to be an overt gutting of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. So the Compromise of 1877 is an important step for maybe Rutherford B. Hayes, but the goals of the Republican Party of ending slavery here in the South and kind of like making sure that equality shows up is like the official, we're out, states figure it out. And it's kind of a tragedy at certain levels, but once again, it's going to be difficult for Congress to create laws about a way of thinking, right? All right. And it's been difficult for us to do so as well. I know that in Mississippi or Alabama, I think it was one of these two states, like they still don't even have hate crime laws, right? If something's done on a specific race, color, or sexual orientation. So I don't know, not race, color, but race, sexual orientation, or otherwise. But other states have hate crimes in which, if that is the motivation of the person who is being found guilty of it, they can actually be eligible for higher punishments, higher fines, or higher terms in jail because it's considered a hate crime. So, anyways, not to go too far off the track, but it's difficult for a government of any level to control the way people think. And at certain levels with free speech, we shouldn't be controlling how to think, correct? We should be able to do our own thing. So you're starting to see why Congress kind of took some steps back out of the South. And they're also just getting a lot of hatred from Southerners about the Northern troops, the Union troops that would be in their homes and in their communities. All right, guys. So a little done with period 5. We've talked about what the land during the Mexican-American War, Mexican Cession, how Texas kind of became part of the Union, how that upset the balance of power, how compromise after compromise largely failed, leading to more violence and ultimately the Civil War, and the consequences of the Civil War and the effects of the Civil War. So hopefully you got that. All right, A pushers. We'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.